afraid of the dark.
Many years ago, when I was still in elementary school, a major construction project started near our town. They were building a large road bypassing us. Now it's called the Federal Highway M5. At that time, the most modern equipment was used to implement this project. Old mountains trembled from explosions. Forest animals left places inhabited for centuries. Our town was small, but for the residents of neighboring villages, it seemed like a significant center. In the summer, they came to us on carts, and in winter, on sleds, to sell meat, butter, honey, and eggs at the market. My grandmother lived right next to this market, and such houses could count on a small additional income. Visitors from the villages often stopped here, paid for lodging with money or goods, spent the night themselves, and tied their horses in the yard. They were unpretentious and only asked not to feed them pork. The samovar with tea was always kept on for a long time. We had one guest who drank a whole samovar of strong tea in the evening, wrapping a towel around his neck. Once he appeared not on market day and not alone. Several very pensive men came with him on sleds. "Don't be afraid, mistress," he said. "We have serious business with these people in the administration." It turned out that the most respected residents of his village, dressed in their best clothes, had come to the city to the authorities on a very important occasion for them. The road construction came close to their village, and suddenly it turned out that the road would be laid right through the Muslim cemetery, which was already 200 years old. This shocked the villagers so much that they sent delegates to the city to explain to the authorities how wrong such a decision was. But unfortunately, their arguments were not heard. They were laughed at in the city administration, calling them superstitious, illiterate, and obstructing progress. The villagers were told that such issues are not decided at the local level but in the big city, and no one would change the route of the road because of some rural cemetery. Explosions thundered, and the remains of those who had no one to rebury were blown into the air. The locals were horrified by such horror and predicted terrible consequences, which soon came true. The first victim, surprisingly, was an official, one of those who laughed at the villagers. He was flying on business somewhere in his car and didn't notice the tractor coming out of the dirt road. Although the road was straight and smooth at that spot, and the driver should have seen it. Thus began a terrible statistics of accidents in this place, already numbering many hundreds of accidents. Our area consists of hills and descents, turns and bridges, but it is near this village that the road becomes straight and the visibility is excellent. Everything is marked out perfectly, no potholes, no bumps, no high embankment. And yet this does not save the passing from completely terrible catastrophes, in which cars are not just dented, but there are always bloody victims, often numerous. On that day, 2 wedding processions from different settlements collided on this section of the road. As a result of the head-on collision of the first cars going towards each other, no one survived. But one of those who died not immediately managed to tell that the driver shouted before inexplicably turning the steering wheel into the oncoming lane, "Where are you rushing, you old fool?" Passengers on a plane flying in from Thailand were greatly frightened by the turbulence. Everyone sighed with relief when they landed. 2 sisters with 2 young children relaxed in the car and drove home, thinking that everything was now behind them. But as it turned out, everything was just beginning. Their lives were cut short there, near this cursed village. The sight of a small car getting under a huge truck was so terrible that the truck driver, an experienced long-haul trucker, could not cope with his emotions and died of a heart attack. Once we were driving on errands and saw a strange sight. Rescue workers were gathering some small metal junk in a pile. A crumpled Jeep Mercedes lay on the side of the road, and a wounded man sat next to it. Orville doctors marveled at how he stayed alive at all, as the pickup truck with which the collision occurred was on gas fuel and simply exploded. But the most amazing thing is what he told. According to him, a man suddenly appeared on the road out of nowhere. Before that, the road was completely empty. The Mercedes was moving at high speed. The truck driver tried to avoid the collision, but it was too late. After the collision, there were no traces of that man. Not all drivers know that ghosts appear on this stretch of road, otherwise they would be more careful. When another person was asked what happened, he begged for something strong to drink. Only after that could he tell his story. He and his partner broke down in the truck, and they stopped on the side of the road. His partner decided to go for help to the people in the nearest village. He left for many hours, did not answer calls, and did not return. When dawn came, the driver went to look for him and found a terrible sight. Wolves tore his partner apart, but there were no sounds of cries or sounds of struggle. The truck driver was in shock and could not believe his eyes. He barely dragged his partner's body into the back and drove on. "You better not see this," he said. "Lord, how will I show this to his wife and children? I don't want to talk about these terrible events again, and it's impossible because there are too many of them." Those who miraculously survive talk about strange visions. Either a person appears on the road, or the driver sees a huge pit in front of him and is forced to turn, or the road suddenly makes a sharp turn, although on the map it is straight as an arrow. Psychics have their own opinion on this matter. They believe that there are certain forces at work in this place, which are not just there. They seem to enjoy what is happening, like a company of crazy directors creating more and more new plots. They need not just an ordinary accident, they need a sophisticated plot. Psychics say that these forces will never be satisfied. They are like an appetite that only grows. And perhaps they are right. After all, when the road was being built, they did not pay with money for relocation. Now they will pay with their lives.